Hi everyone! Eto na naman tayo. Welcome sa iLabMath. Dito pa rin tayo sa Quarter 2 Grade 8 Mathematics, Inverse, Converse, and Contrapositive of an if-then statement. But before we start, please click the notification or the subscribe button para ma-notify kayo pa sa mga susunod na video na gagawin natin. So let's start. Our objective in this module will be able to determine the inverse, converse, and contrapositive of an if-then statement and illustrate the equivalence of the statement and its contrapositive and the converse and inverse of the statement. Conditional statements are formed by joining two statements, P and Q, using the words if and then. Na-discuss na natin anong previous video natin, pero i-review lang natin. If P, then Q, or P implies Q. So, hypothesis is the P, Q is our conclusion. An example natin, an even number is divisible by 2. So, our P is the uneven number. Divisible by 2 is our Q or our conclusion. An even number is our hypothesis. We will make this statement to an if-then form. If it is an even number, then it is divisible by 2. Merong mga related statement pa rin sa if-then sa conditional statement. Ito yung the converse of a conditional statement is formed by interchanging the hypothesis and the conclusion. Kung sa if-then, P implies Q, dito sa converse, kabaliktaran siya sa if-then statement. Ang converse, dito is Q implies P. So, mauuna yung Q before ang P. Okay, an even number is divisible by 2. So, di ba, yung P natin is an even number, then Q is divisible by 2. So, in if-then form, if it is an even number, then it is divisible by 2. Pero sa converse na natin, mauuna na ang Q implies P. So, if it is divisible by 2, then it is an even number. So, madali lang, di ba? So, next, the inverse of conditional statement is formed by negating or negative siya ng both hypothesis and the conclusion. Ito. So, we will have an example. An even number is divisible by 2. Ito yung hypothesis, ito yung conclusion. If-then form, if it is an even number, then it is divisible by 2. Ang converse niya, if it is divisible by 2, then it is an even number. Ang inverse niya ay, if it is not an even number or negative ng if-then form, negative ng if-then form, if it is not an even number, then it is not divisible by 2. Okay, kung ang converse, baliktad ng if-then form, ang inverse naman ay negative ng if-then form. Okay, we were in our third, the contrapositive of a conditional statement is formed by interchanging and negating both the hypothesis and the conclusion. Baligtad ng P implies Q, so magiging Q implies P plus the negative or negating both hypothesis and the conclusion. So, an even number is divisible by 2, contrapositive. If it is not divisible by 2, ito yung natin, Q, di ba? So negative of our Q, if it is not divisible by 2, then it is not an even number. Okay, napakadali, ano? We will have an exercises. Direction, state the converse, inverse, and contrapositive of the following statement. Number 1, discipline and diligence makes a successful student. So our hypothesis or the P is discipline and diligence. Then our Q or the conclusion make a successful student. Okay, so if you have discipline and diligence, then it makes you a successful student. Converse, ang converse, baliktad lang na if-then. If you are a successful student, then you have discipline and diligence. Then, our inverse ay negative ng if-then form. If you do not have discipline and diligence, then it makes you unsuccessful students. Then, contrapositive, it makes you an unsuccessful students, then you do not have discipline and diligence. Okay, number 2. 2 points that lie on the same plane are collinear. If-then form. If points lie in the same plane, then the points are collinear. Converse, if the points are collinear, then they lie on the same plane. Inverse, if points are non-collinear, then they do not lie on the same plane. Contrapositive, if they do not lie on the same plane, then the points are non-collinear. We have number 3, an 18-year-old Filipino can vote. If you are an 18-year-old Filipino, then you can vote. Converse, if you can vote, baliktad ng if-then, if you can vote, then you are an 18-year-old Filipino. Inverse, if you are not an 18-year-old Filipino, then you can vote. Negative ng if-then contrapositive is if you can't vote, then you are not an 18-year-old Filipino. Number 4, if-then statement. If you need to leave your house, then wear a mask covering your nose and mouth. Converse. If you wear your mask covering your nose and mouth, then you need to leave your house. Inverse. If you don't need to leave your house, then don't wear a mask covering your nose and mouth. Contrapositive, if you don't wear your mask covering your nose and mouth, then you don't need to leave your house. The last one, number 5, if you have symptoms of COVID-19, then you need to get a medical care. Converse. If you need to get a medical care, then you have a symptoms of COVID-19. If you don't have symptoms of COVID-19, then you don't need to get a medical care. Contrapositive, if you don't need to get the medical care, then you don't have a symptoms of COVID-19. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Until next video. Bye-bye. Hello everyone, nandito na naman tayo and welcome to iLabMath. Quarter 2 pa rin tayo, grade 8 mathematics, inverse, converse, and contrapositive of an if-then statement. But before we start, please hit the subscribe button para ma-notify kayo sa mga susunod pang video na gagawin natin. So let's start. Our objectives in this module, you will be able to determine the inverse, converse, and contrapositive of if-then statement and illustrate the equivalence of the statement and its contrapositive and the converse and inverse of a statement. Review tayo. Na-take up na natin sa previous video natin, yung if-then statement or conditional statement. Pero i-review na muna natin. Conditional statements are formed by joining two statements, P and Q, using the words if and then. So, if P, then Q, or P implies Q. So, where P ay ating hypothesis, then Q ay ang ating conclusion. Example, an even number is divisible by 2. An even number, dahil may linking verb tayo, na madali nating ma-identify ang paghahati ng statement. An even number, ito yung conclusion natin, or the, ito yung hypothesis natin, or the P, then divisible by 2, ito yung conclusion natin, or the Q. So, if then form, if it is an even number, then it is divisible by 2. Meron tayong mga related statement ng if and then. Ito yung the converse of conditional statement is formed by interchanging the hypothesis and the conclusion, or kabaliktaran interchanging ng if then, Q implies P. Kung ang if then natin is P implies Q, ito naman converse ay Q implies P. So, ibig sabihin, baliktad lang. So, example, an even number is divisible by 2. So, alam na natin na may linking verb. May linking verb tayo. So, dito tayo naghahati. So, an even number, ito yung P, then divisible by 2, ito yung Q. So, if it is an even number, then it is divisible by 2. Sa converse, baliktarin na lang natin. If it is divisible by 2, then it is an even number. Baliktad lang, P implies Q. Next is the inverse of a conditional statement is formed by negating both the hypothesis and the conclusion. Negative lang ng if-then form. An even number is divisible by 2. Ito yung hypothesis and conclusion natin. If-then form, if it is an even number, then it is divisible by 2. Converse, negative ng if-then, if it is divisible by 2, then, okay, converse tayo. If it is divisible by 2, then it is an even number. Okay, so inverse, negative lang ng if-then statement natin. If it is not an even number, then it is not divisible by 2. Okay, third natin is the contrapositive of conditional statement is formed by interchanging the and negating both the hypothesis and the conclusion. Pagbaliktarin natin yung hypothesis and conclusion, then plus the negative. Okay, an even number is divisible by 2. Contrapositive natin. If it is not divisible by 2, then it is not an even number. So we will have our exercises. State the inverse, and contrapositive of the following statement. Number 1, discipline and diligence make a successful student. If and then, so ito yung hypothesis natin. Discipline and diligence. Then our conclusion, make a successful student. If then form, if you have discipline and diligence, then it makes you a successful student. Converse, if you are a successful student, then you have discipline and diligence. Inverse, if you do not have discipline and diligence, then it makes you unsuccessful. So negative of successful, unsuccessful student. Contrapositive, if it makes you an unsuccessful student, then you do not have discipline and diligence. Okay, number 2, 2 points that lie on the same plane are collinear. This is task number 4 and 7, I think, number 4. Then 2 points that lie on the same plane are collinear. If points lie on the same plane, then the points are collinear. If converse, if the points are collinear, then they lie on the same plane. So Q implies P. Then inverse, sa inverse naman, it is the negative of if-then form. If points are non-collinear, then they do not lie on the same plane. Contrapositive, if they do not lie on the same plane, then the points are non-collinear. Number 3, task number 4, number 3, an 18-year-old Filipino can vote. If you are an 18-year-old Filipino, then you can vote. Converse, if you can vote. Q, if Q, then P. So if you can vote, then you are an 18-year-old Filipino. Inverse is the negative of if then form. If you are not an 18-year-old Filipino, then you can vote. Contrapositive, negative of converse. If you can't vote, then you are not an 18-year-old Filipino. Number 4, this is task number 7. If-then statement, if you need to leave your house, then wear a mask covering your nose and mouth. Converse, if you wear your mask covering your nose and mouth, then you need to leave your house. Inverse is the negative of if-then statement. If you don't need to leave your house, then don't wear a mask covering your nose and mouth. Contrapositive, negative of inverse. If you don't wear your mask covering your nose and mouth, then you don't need, nagkabaliktad lang, you don't need to leave your house. Number 5, our last item. If you have symptoms of COVID-19, then you need to get a medical care. So our converse, if you need to get a medical care, then you have a symptoms of COVID-19. Inverse, the negative of if-then statement. If you don't have symptoms of COVID-19, then you don't need to get a medical care. Contrapositive, negative of, or the kabaligtaran ng inverse. If you don't need to get a medical care, then you don't have a symptoms of COVID-19. And that's it. Thank you for watching. See you until next video na naman tayo. Salamat!